In the stale light of the train station, under the creaking shade of a tin awning that had seen better decades, Valencia Rose stood with one hand over her rounded belly and the other gripping a battered suitcase. The cracked concrete beneath. Her feet shimmered with the residue of an unforgiving Texas sun, and her reflection in the grimy glass of the station doors was that of a woman both exhausted and determined. She was 25 and carried the weight of a lifetime, not just in her womb, but in her eyes. The station was nearly empty. Just a vagrant asleep near the benches and a tired old woman mumbling into her knitting. The train she'd stepped off had vanished down the tracks half an hour ago, trailing smoke and the last of her old life. She had nowhere to go, no welcoming party, no husband, no home. Only the soft thudding of the child within her, a metronome counting down towards something she couldn't yet name. Her plan, if it could be called that, was to find a job in this forgotten town of Dustwell, a name as dry as the dirt that choked its streets, maybe get a room in one of the cheap inns, work somewhere, anywhere. But plans have a way of mocking the people who make them, especially plans born of desperation. She walked to the edge of the platform where a crooked wooden bench sat beneath a peeling sign, "Welcome to Dustwell. Pop, 842. She sat, ignored the heat seeping through her threadbare dress, and tried not to cry. Valencia was not weak. She had clawed her way through worse. Escaped an abusive marriage in the middle of the night with just this suitcase, a few dollars, and a fire inside her that had refused to die. But there was something about standing in an unfamiliar place, stomach churning from both hunger and the child inside her, that made courage feel like a lie. She could feel eyes on her. A glance over her shoulder revealed a man leaning against the train station wall, arms crossed, broad shoulders, straw-colored hair under a sweat-darkened Stetson. His shirt was dusted with the same red grit that covered everything in Dustwell, and the lines of hard labor were written across his forearms. Ranch hand, she guessed. The kind who worked from sunup to well past sundown. He wasn't staring in the crude way she'd come to expect from strangers, just watching calmly. Then he nodded once, like he understood something she hadn't said. She turned away. Minutes stretched into an hour. Her back ached. Her mouth was dry. She considered asking the station clerk for a glass of water, but the door to the office was locked, the windows covered in yellowing newspaper. A small voice interrupted the silence. "You hungry, ma'am?" She looked up. The ranch hand stood 10 feet away now, holding a canvas lunch sack. His boots were scuffed, jeans torn at one knee. Close up, his face was younger than she expected, maybe early 30s. Weathered, but not unkind. His voice was soft, almost shy. "I made too much," he said. Valencia hesitated. Instinct screamed caution, but her stomach spoke louder. "What is it?" "Chicken and biscuits. Made 'em myself." She accepted the bag slowly, cautiously. He didn't move closer. Didn't sit. Just tipped his hat and stepped back to give her space. Inside the sack was exactly what he said. Homemade. Still. Warm. "Thank you," she said after a few bites. "I'm Valencia." He nodded again. "Levi." They didn't speak after that. Not for a long while. She ate slowly, savoring each bite. Levi simply leaned back against the wall again and watched the dusty street beyond the station. Eventually, she asked, "Do you know if there's any work here?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Not much. You got a skill?" "Used to be a seamstress," she said. "Before I was ... before." Levi didn't press. "I can ask around." She studied him then. The quiet ease in his posture, the lack of expectation in his expression. He didn't pity her, didn't leer. Just offered food and an ear. "Why help me?" she asked. He looked down at his boots, shrugged. "Seemed like you needed it." She blinked back, the sting in her eyes. As twilight bled into the horizon, Levi said, "You got a place to stay?" "No." He nodded again, like he already knew. I work for the Callahan Ranch. There's a bunkhouse. You could stay there, clean, eat, no strings. She hesitated. Everything in her life had come with strings, but something in his voice made her believe him. Just for a night? Long as you need, he said. She rose, clutching her suitcase, and followed him into the settling dark. Levi walked ahead, not once glancing back to check if she followed. That trust, casual and unspoken, was new to her. They walked a mile, maybe. More, past shuttered storefronts and crooked fences. The road became a dirt path, then opened onto fields that seemed to stretch forever. By the time they reached the ranch, the moon had risen. A crescent sliver, pale and watchful. The Callahan Ranch was quieter than she'd expected. No lights in the main house, just a soft glow from the barn and a flickering oil lamp in the bunkhouse. Chickens rustled in their co-op. Somewhere a horse snorted. Levi led her to the smaller building beside the barn. Inside was simple. A row of beds, a wood stove, a water basin. Clean sheets. It smelled of pine soap and old cedar. You can take that one, he said, pointing to the far corner. She set her suitcase down. Her legs nearly gave out. Food's in the stove. I'll bring you breakfast at dawn. She wanted to say something. Thank you, I'm scared. Who are you really? But all she managed was a nod. Levi paused at the door. Good night, Miss Valencia. Good night, Levi. When the door clicked shut behind him, she collapsed onto the bed. For the first time in weeks, she cried, but not from fear. From the strange, unfamiliar ache of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope that she awoke to birdsong. For a moment, disoriented, she thought she was back in her old apartment. That the pain in her back was just from a night spent on the pull-out couch, not from sleeping in a strange bunkhouse in the middle of nowhere. Then she saw the suitcase. The basin. The child kicked lightly. The new life, still wrapped in the husk of the old. Levi knocked before entering. He had a plate in one hand and a mug in the other. Morning, hope you like eggs. I like anything, she said, accepting both with a shy smile. He set a small jar of jam beside the plate. My sister made that. Wild plum. You have family here? She lives out near Willow Creek, married, 2 kids. Valencia ate slowly. Levi didn't watch her eat. He turned and busied himself with stoking the stove. Any luck with work? She asked. Maybe, he said. Old Mrs. Callahan's been asking for a seamstress. Her hands are no good these days. She'd hire a stranger? She don't like most people, he said with a small grin. But she likes stubborn women. Might be in your favor, Valencia blinked. That might have been a compliment. The rest of the day passed slowly. She helped Levi feed the animals, scrubbed the bunkhouse floor, and tried not to feel like a charity case. Mrs. Callahan did agree to meet her. The old woman was sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, but she nodded slowly as Valencia described her sewing. Experience. You any good with hemming pants? Best in 2 counties, Valencia said. We'll see. That night, Levi brought her a worn sewing machine and a small pile of mending. She worked until her fingers ached, until the weight of the day finally pressed her back into the mattress. The child moved again. Stronger now, life refusing to be ignored. But peace is never permanent. The next day, a man arrived at the ranch. Tall man, black hat, clean boots. Smile like a razor. Valencia saw him from the window and felt her breath catch. She knew that kind of smile. Trouble had found her again. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Valencia hadn't seen a man like him in years. He stepped down from a black stallion with the sort of grace you didn't learn in stables. Tall, lean, wearing a lawn duster that moved like smoke around his legs. His face was smooth, too smooth for Dustwell, like the world hadn't touched him yet. Not in the way it touched men like Levi, whose hands bore the wear of every field, every stone. But But the smile, Valencia had seen that smile before. Once on a man who swore he'd never raise a hand against her. And again on the lawyer who stole her inheritance. It was the smile of a man who always got what he came for. Valencia moved away from the window, heart thudding with an urgency she hadn't felt in days. She didn't want to be seen, didn't want to be remembered. From the bunkhouse she heard voices. Levi's voice was calm, low. The stranger's was smoother, with the lilt of a practiced charmer. She pressed her ear to the door. "Looking for a woman," the man said. Valencia froze. "Ain't we all?" Levi replied, tone unreadable. "This one's particular. Name's Valencia Rose. Tall, brown hair. Pretty, in a quiet sort of way. Pregnant." There was silence, longer than comfort allowed. Then Levi, "Can't say. I've seen her." "You sure?" The man's voice darkened. "She's not easy to miss." Valencia's hands tightened on the windowsill. She backed away, slowly, quietly, until she reached the small washroom at the far end of the bunkhouse. Her legs shook. The man she left behind, her husband in name only, had found her. She didn't know how, didn't care. The how didn't matter. The only question now was whether Levi believed what he said, or if he was giving her time to run. The stranger stayed. "The night," said he was passing through. Said he needed a place to rest his horse, and the Callahan Ranch had been recommended in town. Mrs. Callahan, never one to trust quickly, offered him a bed in the spare cabin behind the barn. Valencia didn't sleep. She lay awake listening to every footstep, every creak of the wind against the rafters. Her child stirred beneath her ribs as if it, too, could feel the danger pressing in. She didn't know the man's real name. He'd used half a dozen aliases when they were married. Banks never asked. Courts never checked, but she knew his voice, knew his laugh, knew the weight of his hand on her wrist when she tried to speak, and she knew what would happen if he found her now. At sunrise, she went to the barn. Levi was there already, saddling his horse. "You lied to him," she said. He didn't look at her, just cinched the strap tight. "Wasn't a lie. I haven't seen anyone like the woman he described." "Levi," he met her eyes. "You trust me?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Then let me handle it." "He won't stop," she said. "Neither will I." The morning passed in silence. Valencia kept to the bunkhouse, sewed 3 shirts and hemmed a pair of pants for Mrs. Callahan. The old woman didn't say much, just watched her with eyes that had seen more life than most. By afternoon, the stranger came to the bunkhouse door, knocked once. "Miss Rose?" Her name, spoken with such casual malice, cut deeper than any blade. She didn't answer, didn't move. "I know you're in there, still nothing." "You can come out now," he said, "or I can come in." The doorknob turned, locked. Valencia stepped back, heart pounding. Then a second voice, "Levi, that door stays closed." She heard the heavy thud of boots turning, the soft scrape of gravel as both men walked away. Later, Levi returned. "He'll leave," he said. "You don't know him." "I know the type." She looked up. "How?" Levi stared at the wall. "My sister." Valencia waited. He didn't say more. He didn't have to. That night, Valencia packed her bag. Levi found her sitting on the bunkhouse bed, suitcase at her feet. "You leaving?" "He won't stop. If I go, maybe he will." "You think that's how he works?" "No, but I can't put this place at risk." "Can't put you at risk." Levi sat across from her. "Valencia, I'm not here because I like the peace and quiet. I'm here because I know what it means to protect something worth keeping." "You think I'm worth keeping?" "I think you're stronger than most people I know." She swallowed hard. "He has money, power. He knows how to twist people, how to lie." "So do I," Levi said, "but I choose not to." "What if he doesn't give you a choice? Then he learns what it means to push a man who doesn't bluff." The next morning, Valencia woke to shouting. She ran outside barefoot, heart in her throat. The stranger stood in the barn, face red, coat dusted with hay. Levi stood across from him, calm as ever. "Where is she?" the man bellowed. "Gone," Levi said. "Back on the train. You're lying." "Maybe, but you'll have to find out the hard way." The stranger stepped forward. Levi didn't flinch. "You want to hit me?" he asked. "Do it. Then ride away before this becomes something worse." The stranger's hand twitched. Then he smiled. "You think you've won? I think you should leave." The stranger tipped his hat mockingly and walked out. But Valencia knew it wasn't over. It was just beginning. And so did Levi. He turned to her then, meeting her eyes from across the yard. For the first time, she saw the storm behind his quiet. This wasn't a man who ran from trouble. This was a man who'd learned how to bury it deep. She just didn't know what would happen when someone tried to dig it up, and she was about to find out. The town of Dustwell had always been a place where rumors traveled faster than truth. And by midday, the wrong sort of people had already heard that a man had come looking for a woman and left angry. That kind of thing stuck in Dustwell, especially when it was the Callahan ranch involved. Valencia kept her head down, but the weight of eyes never left her shoulders. At the feed store, she noticed how the clerk suddenly stopped smiling. At the sewing shop, Mrs. Dobbins, a woman who'd once complimented Valencia's stitching with an almost maternal fondness, pretended not to see her. It wasn't cruelty. It was fear. Dustwell didn't deal in conflict. It survived by pretending. It couldn't see trouble until it left town. She returned to the bunkhouse and bolted the door behind her. Levi brought her lunch but didn't stay. He had a different air now, like he was moving through the world with one hand near his holster and the other on an invisible door, ready to shut it on whatever came next. When dusk fell, Valencia walked to the edge of the ranch. There was no wind, only a stillness that made the hairs on her arms lift. In the dark, she could make out two shapes sitting on horseback at the far ridge. Just silhouettes, UNMOVING. They stayed there until the moon crept overhead. Watching. The next morning, the bunkhouse door creaked open before the sun rose. She sat upright in her cot, heart in her throat, but it was Levi. "Don't scream," he said low. She exhaled. "You need to come with me." Valencia rose, dressed quickly, followed him. They walked toward the barn, past the horses, and into a small equipment shed. Inside was a trapdoor she hadn't seen before. Beneath it, a narrow tunnel. "Callahan Ranch used to be part of the underground rail line," he said. "Mrs. Callahan don't talk about it, but the bones are still here. Tunnel runs under the north pasture, comes up behind the ridge. You want me to run? I want you to have a way out. Just in case." She stared at him. "And what about you?" "I'm not the one he's hunting." Valencia stepped closer, close enough to see the strain in his jaw, the sleeplessness under his eyes. "He won't stop," she whispered, "even if I leave." "You know that." Levi nodded, said nothing. 3 days passed. 3 quiet days. No more riders at the ridge. No knock at the door. Just calm, the kind that always came before a storm. On the 4th morning, Levi was gone. No note. No sign of struggle. Just gone. His tools were left where he'd dropped them, his bed unslept in. Valencia searched the ranch, then the road, then the ridge. At the edge of the pasture, she found tracks, hoof prints, 2 horses. One led toward town, other went west. She saddled a horse for the first time in years. Her body protested. Her balance felt wrong with the child pressing forward. But she rode, first to town. No one had seen him. Then toward the western ridge. By mid-afternoon, she found him, tied to a tree, unconscious. Blood at his temple. Rope marks on his wrists. She ran to him, falling to her knees. His breath was shallow but steady. From behind, a voice. "You always did pick the wrong men, Valencia." She turned. The stranger stood 10 feet away, a pistol in hand. "I didn't pick you," she said. "No," he agreed. "But you sure didn't run fast enough. Let him go. You think this is about him?" It was never about anyone else, just control. Just ownership. "And you think running made you free?" He laughed. "You belong to me. Still, legally." Valencia rose slowly, putting herself between the man and Levi. "You can't own someone who's not afraid of you anymore," the stranger smiled. But his eyes flicked past her. To Levi he raised the gun. She moved first. A rock, small, jagged from the ground. Thrown with all the weight of rage and fear and months of silence, it struck his hand. He stumbled. The gun fired wide. Valencia lunged. They hit. The ground hard. He was stronger, but she had surprise. And fury, and everything to lose. They struggled. His hand went for her throat. Then a shot rang out. Not his. He went still. Fell back. Behind them, Levi stood, pale, shaking, but awake, holding the gun. He dropped it. Sank to the ground. Valencia crawled to him. Held his face in her hands. "You came. For me," she whispered. "Always would." And there, in the dirt and the blood and the sunburnt silence, they chose each other, not out of fear, not out of obligation, but out of something stronger. Out of survival, out of love. They buried him beneath the ridge. No name on the marker, just a flat stone and the quiet dignity of a man who had once taken everything and left with nothing. Dustwell Law didn't ask many questions. A sheriff rode out from a neighboring town. Looked at the body, listened to Levi's short, flat retelling, then nodded and tipped his hat. "Self-defense," he said. Shame it came to that. No one cried, not even Valencia. She had cried enough for 100 women in the months before. Now, her eyes were dry, her spine straighter than it had ever been. Levi, his arm in a sling, didn't speak much. Not because he didn't want to, but because the quiet had become sacred, earned. Their shared silence was heavier than words, filled with everything that didn't need to be said. They returned to the ranch, and life resumed its rhythm, albeit changed. Valencia stayed in the bunkhouse, but now Levi made sure to walk her back each night after dinner, even if his steps were slow. She resumed her sewing for Mrs. Callahan. The old woman said nothing of the trouble that had passed through, but her eyes lingered longer now, and the tea she offered each morning was stronger than usual. A kind of unspoken loyalty brewed in. Every steaming cup. Word spread slowly. The kind of word that didn't travel by telegraph or train, but in the huddled whispers of ranch hands and church ladies. Some said Levi had gunned down a bounty hunter. Others swore Valencia had killed the man herself. All agreed on one thing. The woman who had stepped off the train, a stranger, was no longer alone. 3 weeks after the burial, Valencia woke to pain. Sharp and low, a tightness that gripped her spine and forced her to the floor. It passed quickly, but the message was clear. Time was running out. She walked to the main house that morning and stood before Mrs. Callahan, with one hand pressed to her belly. "I need to make plans." The old woman set her tea down. "What kind of plans?" "For the birth." Mrs. Callahan studied her. "You think we've never delivered a baby out here?" Valencia shook her head. "It's not that. I just ... I don't want to be a burden." "You've been working since the day you arrived," she snapped. "No one who mends my husband's pants is a burden." Valencia smiled faintly. "I need to be sure." Mrs. Callahan softened. "The old midwife lives up past Willow Creek. I'll send word. You'll stay right where you are." Preparations began in earnest. Levi converted the old storeroom behind the bunkhouse into a temporary birthing room. He scrubbed every surface, whitewashed the walls, and laid clean linens across the cot. Valencia caught him one evening sewing curtains from her fabric scraps. "You sew now?" she teased. He didn't look up. "Only in emergencies." She stood in the doorway and watched him. The way he worked in silence, steady and patient. Her breath caught, not from fear or pain, but from something quieter, a kind of awe. Days turned to weeks. The child grew restless, kicking, shifting, as if impatient with the world it hadn't yet seen. Valencia spent hours walking the pasture in the early light, speaking to the child in murmurs. Stories of stars, rivers, the smell of horses and soap. "You're coming into a world that almost broke me," she whispered. "But I'm still here. And that means you get to start from a place I fought for." She never mentioned the man they buried, only the man who stayed. On the eve of the child's arrival, a storm rolled in. The wind howled like a wounded thing. Rain slapped the bunkhouse roof in sheets. The air inside grew heavy with expectation. Valencia paced, unable to sit still. Levi watched from the door. "Storm won't last," he said. "I think it will," she replied. "But that's all right. I've weathered worse." He walked to her, placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'll be here." Through all of it, she placed her hand over his. "I know." The labor began at midnight. Slow, painful, relentless. The midwife arrived an hour before, drawn by a sense no telegram could explain. She was short, round, and quiet. Smelled of cinnamon and wood smoke. Her hands were calloused and sure. "You breathe," she told Valencia. "I'll do the rest." Levi waited outside, pacing the length of the bunkhouse porch. Every cry from within twisted his stomach. Every hour felt like a decade. Mrs. Callahan sat nearby, knitting something unseen. "It's different," she said. "When you care." Levi nodded. He didn't trust himself to speak. The sun rose slowly, casting gold over the wet earth. Then silence. Then a sound. Soft. New. Alive. The door creaked open. The midwife emerged, tired but smiling. "She's fine." "They both are." Levi exhaled. "She wants you." He stepped inside. Slowly. Valencia lay against the pillows, pale and glowing. In her arms, wrapped in an old flannel blanket, was the child, tiny, red-faced, already frowning. "She looks like you," Valencia whispered. He laughed shakily. "Poor thing. Do you want to hold her?" He hesitated, then nodded. Valencia guided the baby into his arms. Levi held her like she was made of glass. She blinked up at him with curious, stormy eyes. "She doesn't cry," he murmured. "Not yet. She's still deciding if she likes this place." He sat beside the bed, baby in his arms, woman at his side, and for the first time in years, something inside him settled. They named her Wren, after the bird that nested each spring in the rafters of the bunkhouse porch. Small. Fierce. Loud when necessary. The townsfolk came slowly, bringing jars of preserves, quilts, knitted socks. None asked questions. Dustwell had decided, in its own way, that Valencia and Levi belonged. The midwife stayed a week, then left without ceremony, her bag clinking softly with vials and tinctures. The ranch returned to its rhythm. Except now, there was a new beat. A new heartbeat. Valencia rocked Wren beneath the cottonwood tree each morning. Levi built a cradle from scrap pine and rubbed it smooth with beeswax. At night, they sat near the fire, speaking softly, watching the flames. She didn't say the word love, neither did he, but it was there. In the way he filled her water pitcher before she asked. In the way she folded his shirts with care. In the space between their silences. In the peace they had earned. And the quiet promise that whatever storms might come next, they would face them together. The wind shifted in Dustwell, not in the way that made dust swirl off the ridge or sent chickens scrambling for cover, but in that slow, invisible way that only the quietest towns could feel. The kind that came with eyes turning sideways and voices dropping an octave. The kind that arrived in a whisper and left you with a shiver. It began with a letter. A stranger rode into town on a gray mule, handed it to the postmaster, and left without giving his name. The envelope was rough parchment, sealed with a black wax mark in the shape of a spur. No return address. Just one word scribbled across the front. Valencia. The postmaster, wise enough to know danger when it wore boots, delivered it without comment. Handed it to her while she was picking up thread and buttons. She didn't open it until she reached the porch of the bunkhouse. Levi stood nearby, cleaning the trough. Her fingers trembled. Wren, nestled in a blanket sling at her chest, shifted as if sensing her mother's unease. Levi looked up. Something wrong? She didn't answer right away. Just broke the wax and unfolded the paper. 4 lines. Written in a spidery hand. You buried a dog, but the pack still breathes. We remember the blood. We are coming. She handed it to Levi. Said nothing. He read it once. Folded it. Set it on the porch rail and let the wind take it. They didn't panic. Panic was for people who had the luxury of running. Instead, they prepared. Mrs. Callahan brought out an old revolver from a drawer she hadn't opened in 20 years. She oiled it herself, checked the barrel, said nothing, but her eyes told the story. She had known a younger world, a harsher one, and she had never fully left it behind. Levi began checking the fence lines twice a day. Set traps along the ridge path. Reinforced the bunkhouse door with iron brackets. Valencia stopped walking to town. Instead, she taught herself to shoot. The first rider arrived at dusk. He didn't knock. Didn't ask. He stood at the far edge of the ranch, just past the last fence post. Watching, waiting, hands at his sides, gun at his hip. Levi stepped out onto the porch. Didn't move further. The 2 men looked at each other across a field of wild grass and old sins. Then the rider turned and left. They came in pairs after that. 2 men riding low, speaking to no one. Then 4. Then 6. They didn't touch the ranch. Didn't cross the line. But they circled, like wolves testing the edge of firelight. One night, Wren wouldn't sleep. She fussed in Valencia's arms, tiny fists pushing against her mother's collarbone. Levi took her, held her close, walked the length of the porch under starlight. She's restless, he said. She knows, Valencia replied. They sat on the steps together. She leaned her head against his shoulder. You afraid? He asked. Not for me. He nodded, then added after a beat. Me neither. 2 mornings later, the trap Levi set on the west trail snapped shut around a boot. The man was dead by the time they found him. Young, maybe 18. Skin too soft for a life of war. He carried nothing but a knife, a half-empty flask, and a scrap of fabric tucked into his shirt. It was black, torn from the same coat Valencia's husband used to wear. They buried him beneath the hill. No marker. No name. Valencia didn't speak for the rest of the day. Levi stood guard until the stars rose. Then came the fire. It started on the far end of town, the stable near the edge where the horses were kept. By the time anyone smelled the smoke, it was too late. Flames licked at the sky. People shouted. Buckets flew. But Dustwell wasn't built for battle. It had no water lines. No militia. Only fear. And when fear took hold, it spread faster than fire. By dawn, 2 stores had burned. A barn, half a home. No one was dead. Not yet, but everyone knew that part was next. The sheriff arrived 3 days later. Not from Dustwell. Not by request. He came from the north, on his own horse, with a badge from a town that didn't trust the government to protect them. He introduced himself with a slow voice and a slow eye. Name's Hollis, he said. Heard there's trouble. Levi nodded. You heard right. Got any names? No, just a warning. Hollis tapped the butt of his rifle. Then I'll stay a while. He did. And that made everything worse. Hollis wasn't a bad man. Just the wrong kind of man. He moved. Like someone who'd seen too much blood and thought the next pint would be his cure. He patrolled at night. Walked the line. But he didn't understand Dustwell. Didn't understand the silence, or the kind of threat that sat in the dark and waited for you to blink. One night, Hollis disappeared, gone without a sound. His horse was found tied to the old hitching post. Saddle intact, badge gone. No blood. No note. Just a single bullet left on the porch of the Callahan house. Clean. Polished. Unifired. The next day, a woman rode into town. Black dress, gloves, wide-brimmed hat, pale skin like paper. She didn't speak, didn't smile. She walked into the church, stood before the altar, and placed something there. A second bullet. Then she left. Valencia watched from the bunkhous. Ren slept against her chest. Levi stood beside her, his arm touching hers. They're warning us, he said. No, Valencia replied. They're measuring us. He looked at her. She didn't blink. They want to see what kind of woman walks out of fire, she said, and she turned her eyes back toward the hills. They're about to find out. That night, Valencia wrote a letter. Short. Precise. She handed it to Levi. You know who to give it to. He read it, raised an eyebrow. You sure? She nodded. He owes me. Levi didn't argue. 2 hours later, he wrote out. Alone. Into the dark. Ren cried once that night. Valencia didn't pick her up right away. She let the baby cry, let the sound ring through the stillness like a war drum. Then she gathered her daughter. Held her close and whispered, if they come, we'll be ready. Somewhere beyond the hills, beyond the dust and the fences, beyond the reach of law or mercy, a man opened a letter with hands that had once held a knife to Valencia, Rose's throat. He read the words, then read them again. He didn't smile, didn't curse. He just turned to his men and said, saddle up. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. The man who opened Valencia's letter was called Doyle. He wore no badge, carried no name that towns would recognize with warmth. He wasn't a sheriff or an outlaw. He lived in the in-between, in the ash left behind when law and crime burned each other out. Some said he'd once led a posse. Others whispered he was the last of the Hangtree Seven. But all agreed on one thing. Doyle didn't ride for favors. He rode for debts. And Valencia Rose had one of the few chips he'd never cashed. The sun hadn't risen yet when Levi returned. He rode hard. Dust caked his clothes. His horse bled from one hoof. Valencia met him at the fence line. Did he get it? Levi nodded, throat dry. He read it, didn't say a word. Just stared at the fire for a while. Then stood up, saddled his horse, and left. How long? She asked. Hard to say. But when he gets here, things will change. Valencia stared out at the hills, at the line of distant trees that hid men with memories like knives. Then we hold the line until he does. The town was already fracturing. Stores locked their doors at midday. Curtains were drawn at noon. The church bell, once a comfort, hadn't rung in 6 days. At the general store, 2 brothers argued in the street over a missing shipment of flour. One drew a gun. Neither fired, but the message was clear. Dustwell was breaking, and everyone felt it. Mrs. Callahan handed Valencia a pistol that night. Not Levi. Mrs. Callahan. The old woman pressed it into her palm like a prayer. This was my husband's, she said. It's been quiet for 20 years. Let's hope it stays that way. Valencia took it without protest. Ren cooed softly in the cradle beside them. Mrs. Callahan looked at the child, then at her. You've brought a lot of noise into this town, she said. Valencia straightened. I didn't ask for this. No, the old woman agreed. But you're handling it better than most men would. That counts for something. That night, Valencia slept with the gun beneath her pillow. She dreamed of boots in snow, of blood on a porch, of a man whose face she couldn't see, holding Ren in arms too. Thin to be real. She woke before dawn. Sweating. And knew they were closer. The ambush came on the 4th night. They didn't attack the ranch. They hit the water tower. 2 men, maybe 3. Enough to pour kerosene around the base and strike a match. The flames lit up the town like a funeral pyre. Levi and Valencia saw it from the porch. He moved first. She followed, pistol in hand, Ren bundled against her chest. By the time they reached the tower, it was too late. The top collapsed in on itself, spilling water and ash across the ground. Someone had painted a message on the base. "She doesn't belong here," Levi spat in the dirt. "Cowards." But Valencia wasn't looking at the fire. She was looking at the horizon. Where, in the light of the flames, she saw a figure on horseback. Not attacking. Just watching. Again. Doyle arrived at sunrise. No fanfare. No words, just a man. In a long coat, his horse streaked with sweat, his eyes the color of tarnished coins. He didn't dismount, just nodded once at Valencia. "That your daughter?" She nodded. "She's got your eyes, poor thing." Valencia cracked a smile. "I knew you'd come. I didn't come for you. I came for the score." She didn't argue. He turned to Levi. "You the one who hit my man in Creed's Pass 3 years ago?" Levi blinked. He was trying to rob a church. Doyle nodded. "So yeah," Levi shrugged. "Guess so." Doyle spat into the dirt. "Good. Never liked him anyway." They made plans quickly. Doyle didn't ask for details. He gave them. "There's 6 of them," he said. 4 men, 1 woman, 1 ghost. "Ghost?" Levi asked. Doyle's lip twitched. "They call him Caleb. No one's seen his face. No one's lived to tell it. Shoots through wind. Doesn't miss." "And he's coming here?" Valencia asked. "He's already here." The next week blurred. Barricades. Ammo. Lessons in silence and movement. Doyle took over the church tower. Levi stayed near the barn. Valencia manned the bunkhouse. Ren slept in the root cellar during the day, guarded by Mrs. Callahan and a double-barreled shotgun that hadn't seen the light in 25 years. No one talked much, but the air was heavy, thick with waiting. Then, finally, it came. Gunfire. 1 shot. Not random. Not warning. Just one, and a scream that followed from the western fence. Doyle didn't flinch. Starting early. Levi grabbed his rifle. Valencia kissed Ren's forehead. Whispered something only the child would ever know. Then she walked out into the dust. They didn't rush in like amateurs. They moved like wraiths. 2 from the ridge. 1 from the old stable. 1 from the well. They weren't attacking the ranch. They were surrounding it. Valencia took the first shot. Dropped a man with a red bandana. As he crawled beneath the east fence, Doyle grinned. Still sharp, Levi took the second. Bullet to the knee, but the others kept coming. Gunfire cracked, glass shattered. The Callahan rooster exploded in a cloud of feathers. Valencia ducked behind the trough. Reloaded. Heard Levi shout. Spun, saw him. Bleeding from the thigh, firing anyway. Then the church bell rang. Once. Twice. A signal. Doyle's doing. The ghost had arrived. Valencia didn't see Caleb, but she felt him, like cold breath against her neck. She moved faster. Lower. Drew fire. Fired back. 2 shots. Then silence. Pause. Like the desert inhaled. Then a bullet screamed past her head, shaved off part of the trough. Another. Closer. A whisper of wind. Biting her cheek. She ducked, crawled toward the barn. Ren's cries echoed in her head even though the baby was safe. Focus. Move. Think. She reached the barn door. Collapsed behind a hay bale. Sweat stung her eyes. And then, shadow. In the rafters. She looked up. Saw him. Caleb. Thin, ghost-like, rifle balanced, across a beam. Aimed. At the cellar. At Ren. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She drew her pistol. Aimed. Fired. And missed, but he didn't. He turned, fired back. Her shoulder went cold. Pain exploded. She dropped. He swung the rifle. Again. Time slowed. Then a second shot. From the tower. Doyle. Straight through Caleb's chest. The ghost fell. Silent. Dead. When it ended. There were 4 bodies in the dirt. 2 ran. Doyle didn't chase them. Neither did Levi. Valencia sat in the barn, blood soaking her dress. Smiling. Because Wren was safe. And Dustwell, for the first time in months, was quiet. Wren didn't cry again that night. She slept soundly, bundled in wool, as if the fire and thunder that tore through Dustwell had never reached her cradle. As if the storm of violence had been just another dream to pass through and forget. The cellar walls held steady, thick and cool, muffling the last echoes of gunfire. Valencia, though, didn't sleep. She lay on the cot beside the child, her shoulder bandaged in rough cloth, the pain a steady drum behind her thoughts. Each beat of her heart pushed the memory deeper. Caleb in the rafters, that terrible aim, the near silence of his presence. A ghost indeed. Now buried with the rest. Above, Doyle paced. She could hear him on the floorboards. A steady rhythm. Not anxious, just awake. Always awake. Mrs. Callahan sat in the corner, shotgun resting across her knees, her eyes shut but not fully gone. The house smelled like tobacco and smoke and blood that had already started to dry. Levi was worse off. They found him on the porch after the last body fell. His leg wrapped, bleeding slowed, but the wound would keep him down for days. Didn't say much. Didn't have to. When Valencia leaned over him, pressed her palm to his cheek. He took her hand. In his alive. That was enough. Doyle didn't stay for breakfast. Didn't wait for thanks. When the sun touched the edge of the barn, he saddled his horse, lit a cigarette with one hand, and nodded once to the air. Valencia stepped onto the porch. You always leave this fast? He squinted toward the horizon. I stay, folks get nervous. Makes it hard to sleep. She folded her arms. I owe you. No, you don't, he mounted. The horse didn't shift. You paid me in trouble. That's the only coin I trust. He turned to go, then paused. You ever need me again? She raised an eyebrow. You'll come? No, but I'll listen. He rode out without another word. The days that followed were too quiet. Like Dustwell itself, wasn't sure whether it had survived or simply changed shape. The townsfolk returned to their routines, but there was a stiffness in the air. A kind of reverence. Children who used to play near the church now avoided it entirely. The well was rebuilt, but no one lingered by it. And at the general store, the clerk gave Valencia extra sugar with her flour. No charge. Wren grew fast. She learned to crawl with urgency, her limbs always pulling toward sunlight, toward open doors, toward places Valencia hadn't yet swept for danger. One morning, Levi found her under the table, clutching a silver button in her tiny fist. He chuckled, then winced. The wound in his leg still sang with each movement. Girls got grit, he said. She was born with it, Valencia replied. Born through it. The ranch changed to. Mrs. Callahan started hiring again. A couple from the next county arrived with their teenage son. Strong backs, quiet mouths. The kind of folks who understood when not to ask questions. The fence was reinforced, the fields replanted, the bunkhouse rebuilt with stronger locks. And a new door. Made from the planks of the old water tower, a memory. And a warning. By autumn, Dustwell had turned a corner. Church bells rang again, markets reopened. Laughter returned, but no one forgot. They never would. Especially not Valencia. Because on the first frost of November, she received another letter. No seal this time. No wax. Just paper. Inside, one line. The rest are watching. No signature. She folded it, placed it in the hearth, and let the flames eat it. Then she walked outside, Wren on her hip, and stared into the open fields. Let them watch, she whispered. Time rolled forward. Wren learned to walk, then run. Her laughter filled the bunkhouse like sunlight on cold wood. Her first word was no. Valencia wasn't surprised. Levi healed. Slowly, the limp remained. But he used it like punctuation, a way to slow his steps when Wren demanded to be chased and caught. He never asked for more, never pressed her with questions about what came. Next, but he stayed. And so did she. They became something. Not perfect. Not named, but something solid. Built not from romance, but from survival, respect, and the daily choice to stay. Years passed. The bunkhouse turned into a home. Mrs. Callahan passed quietly one winter. They buried her near the ridge, next to her husband. Wren left daisies there every Sunday. No one taught her that. On Wren's 5th birthday, a new face came through town. A woman. Alone. Scar across her cheek. Saddlebag full of maps. She asked for Valencia by name. When they met on the porch, the woman didn't offer her hand, just said, "I've heard the stories." Valencia's face didn't change. "Then you know how they end. I was hoping you'd help me write a new one." Behind her, Wren laughed as Levi lifted her high. The wind picked up. The sky stretched wide, and for the first time in a long time, Valencia smiled like she believed in beginnings. Far from Dustwell, in a place where names were traded like coins, Doyle sat in a saloon, listening to a tale told in whispers. Woman with a baby and a gun killed a ghost. Scared the rest into bones. He said nothing, just drank. But the glint in his eye wasn't reflection. It was memory. And maybe something like pride. Wren's 6th spring came with green shoots and a stillness in Dustwell that felt earned. The town that once trembled in the dark now stretched under the sun with a cautious pride. They'd survived something unnamed, more than a battle, deeper than fear. And that kind of survival changes a place. It changes people too. Wren no longer asked why she had to stay close to the bunkhouse. She knew. Children understand things long before they learn to speak them. She carried that knowledge like a stone in her pocket, never showing it, but always feeling the weight. Valencia watched her daughter bloom with wide eyes and sharp instincts. Wren walked without sound, listened without blinking. And when she touched a thing, it was with reverence, as if even small things could be holy, or dangerous, or both. Levi said it one morning, watching Wren trace the grain in a wooden fence. Post. She sees the world like it's waiting to speak. Valencia only nodded. She's her father's daughter. Not Levi. The other one. The woman who had come asking for Valencia returned in the summer. Her name was Grace. She never said her last name, and Valencia never asked. She stayed in town, helping Mrs. Collier with the schoolhouse, but her nights were spent at the bunkhouse porch, speaking low with Valencia over black coffee and starlight. Wren listened sometimes. Grace spoke of the North, of shifting alliances, strange disappearances, new powers rising where the old ones had finally died of rot. Names changed hands, maps were redrawn, but the ghosts, they didn't disappear. They just changed masks. "I'm not here to start a war," Grace told her one evening. "I didn't think you were," Valencia said. "I just think you might be the kind of person who can end one." Valencia didn't answer for a week. She planted turnips, chopped firewood, helped Levi stitch a new strap on the saddle. She kissed Wren's brow before bed and stared at the moon until her eyes watered. Then she spoke. "We don't run toward blood anymore." "I know," Grace said, "but we won't be surprised by it either." Grace offered her hand. Valencia didn't take it, but she didn't turn away. The first letter came by Raven, unmarked, parchment curled at the edges. A single word, soon. Grace burned it in the stove. "I think they know where I am." "They always do," Valencia said. "But they don't know who you're with." Dustwell prepared without ceremony. No sirens. No drills. Just quiet changes. Nails hammered deeper. Lantern oil stockpiled. Mr. Hooper at the trading post began stocking salt and rope again. The schoolhouse doubled its food stores. Children were taught more than letters. They learned to listen for silence. One morning, Levi brought home a new dog. Big, rangy, yellow-eyed. Scar across its muzzle. Wren named it Clover. Clover didn't bark, but she watched the horizon like something owed her a debt. The attack didn't come all at once. It dripped, A merchant's cart found overturned outside of town. His eyes missing. His pockets untouched. A child's doll nailed to the door of the church. 3 fence posts marked with red string. Valencia. Counted them every morning. 3 strings, then 5, then Nonewre, and didn't cry. She asked questions. Are they the same ones? No, Valencia said. These ones are worse. Ren thought on that. Good. Valencia raised an eyebrow. Why? Because you already beat the last ones. Valencia kissed her daughter's forehead. Go help Levi with the kindling. Grace moved her bed to the bunkhouse. She slept with a knife beneath her pillow and maps nailed to the underside of the floorboards. One night, Valencia found her crying. She didn't interrupt, just sat beside her, held her hand. When Grace spoke, her voice cracked. They're not after me. They're after what I know. And they'll tear through everything to keep that quiet. Valencia nodded slowly. Then we'll have to be louder. Doyle sent a letter. Just 4 words. This time, I come. It arrived by hand. Delivered by a boy who didn't know what he carried. Valencia tucked it into her coat pocket. That night, she dreamt of blood on the train tracks and the sound of something. Enormous stirring underground. They arrived just after the first. Frost. Not riders, not gunslingers, not anything she expected. They came in a wagon, white, unmarked, pulled by 2 horses that didn't blink. The man who stepped out wore a smile that didn't touch his eyes. His coat was spotless. His boots shined. His hands empty. He walked into the center of Dustwell and rang a bell no one remembered hanging there. Then he spoke. We come in peace. We come to negotiate. No one moved. Valencia stepped forward. Ren watched from the porch. Grace had a rifle tucked beneath her coat. The man tipped his hat. Miss Rose, I presume? Who wants to know? Only those interested in a better future. One without fire, without ghosts, without blood. Valencia let the silence stretch. Then, we already have that. You just weren't invited. He laughed softly. I thought you might say that. He gestured to the wagon. 2 more men stepped down. One held a ledger, the other a cage. Inside it, something moved. Not a child, not an animal, something in between. Ren took a step back. Valencia's hand dropped to her side. The man smiled wider. This is not a threat. Miss Rose, this is an offer. No, Valencia said. It's bait. He didn't deny it. Then what do you want? She asked. Only your silence. She laughed then. A short, sharp thing. You came all this way to ask the wrong woman for the one thing she's never had. The rifle cracked once. The cage shattered. The creature inside bolted. The man fell. Clutching his side. Grace stepped into the open, smoke curling from her gun. Ren stood behind her. Not blinking, Valencia drew her pistol. The sky broke open with thunder, and Dustwell again prepared to remember. The thunder didn't stop. Not that day. Not the next. The skies over Dustwell turned to the color of bruises, heavy with clouds that never let loose. The air tasted like metal. The kind of stillness that makes animals hide. The kind of quiet that means something is listening. They buried the man in the coat just outside town. Not because he deserved it, but because leaving a body above ground invites worse things. Valencia didn't speak a word over his grave. Grace scattered salt. The cage lay in pieces. The thing inside it had run. No one had seen where. But Ren hadn't slept since. She stared at the corners of the room, sat up too straight, breathing too carefully. Her hand always clutched the hem of her mother's shirt, as if letting go would mean falling into something without a name. Grace blamed herself. She started keeping notes again. In the old ledger, charts, circles, arrows pointing to nothing. Pages filled with names scratched out in red. At night, she whispered them like prayers. Or confessions. Valencia didn't stop her. Some grief can't be buried. Only folded. Carried. Doyle came on the 3rd day. He didn't knock. Didn't ask. He stepped inside the bunkhouse, took off his coat, sat at the table. "The weather's wrong," he said. Grace looked up. "It followed them." "Yeah," he said, "and it'll stay till it finishes." Valencia poured coffee. "Finish what?" "Whatever they started." He sipped. "Might be you, might be her." He nodded toward Wren. "She didn't do anything," Valencia said. "She was born," Doyle said. "Sometimes that's enough." By the end of the week, the town was split. Half wanted to send the girl away. The other half stood behind Valencia. The first half didn't speak loud. Not when Levi walked by. Not when Clover growled. Not when Doyle was in earshot. Still, they watched. Doors opened slower. Children weren't allowed near the ranch. The pastor canceled his visit. Valencia didn't flinch. She reinforced the fence. Again, bought another lock. Whittled Wren a toy wolf from Ashwood. "You're not going anywhere," she whispered. "Not now. Not ever." Wren didn't answer, just hugged the wolf to her chest, and kept staring at the fossil. Corners. It came at dusk. Not a shape, not a man. A sound. Soft. Like weeping. It moved between walls. Beneath floors. Through trees. Wherever you stood, it was behind you. Not loud. But close. Like someone crying into your neck. Valencia heard it first. She rose from her bed, pistol in hand. But there was no one to aim at. Wren stood in the hallway. Not afraid, just still. When Valencia touched her shoulder, the girl turned. "They're looking for me," she said. Grace studied the storm, tracked the lightning patterns, measured wind speed. She marked the moments when the weeping sound got louder and when it vanished. "It's not natural," she muttered. "It's not weather." Levi grimaced. "What is it then?" "Something older than words," she paused. "Or something new trying to be old." Doyle cleaned his revolver. "Does it bleed?" Grace didn't look up. Eventually, on the 9th day, the church caught fire. No one saw it start. No lightning, no candles. No one inside, just fire. By the time they arrived, it was ash. Only one thing survived. The bell. It sat on the ground. UNBURND. It rang once. No wind. No hands, just sound. Valencia buried her hands in the dirt that night. She knelt in the garden, eyes closed, fingers deep in the cold soil. Wren stood beside her. "You planting something?" the girl asked. "No," Valencia said. "Just reminding the earth we're still here." Wren nodded. The weeping sound grew louder. The next morning, 6 strangers stood at the edge of town. All dressed the same. Gray coats, black gloves. No hats. They didn't speak, didn't move, just watched. When Levi tried to speak to one, he vanished. Not ran. Vanished. Like breath in cold air. Valencia tightened the straps on her boots. Grace gathered her maps. Doyle loaded. Every chamber. They waited until nightfall. The strangers did not leave. They didn't light fires, didn't eat, didn't blink. Just stared. At the house. At Wren. She stared back. The clouds spun above them. Lightning lit the sky with no sound. Wren stepped outside. Barefoot. Small. Steady. Valencia moved to stop her. But Doyle held her arm. "She's not running," he said. "She's claiming." Wren walked to the fence. The strangers didn't move. She raised her hand. One stepped forward. The weeping stopped. The clouds opened. A single beam of moonlight struck the earth between them. The air trembled, and the ground split. From the crack came a sound. Not crying. Laughter. Low, cruel, hungry. Valencia shouted. Grace raised her rifle. Levi limped forward. Wren didn't move. She opened her mouth and whispered a name. The strangers flinched. The beam of moonlight darkened. The laughter stopped, and the crack sealed. Wren lowered her hand. Turned. And walked back inside. No. One followed. The strangers were gone. Not dead. Just gone. The storm faded. The bell cracked. The fence held. Valencia sat beside her daughter and asked, "What did you say?" Wren looked at her. "I said the name they forgot." "What name is that?" Wren smiled. "Mine." Morning came soft. Not like the old mornings. Not like war. There was no ash in the air, no iron in the wind. Just dew on the fields and the sound of birds that hadn't sung since the day the strangers arrived. The storm had passed. The clouds had scattered. The air was new. And in that hush, Dustwell remembered how to breathe. Wren slept long, curled in blankets stitched by 3 different hands. Her wolf carved from ashwood tucked beneath her arm, her brow smooth. Her fists unclenched. She had faced something most people never could name, and she had spoken. Not screamed, not begged, spoke, with clarity, with power, with purpose. Valencia sat beside her, silent, brushing strands of hair from her daughter's forehead. Levi stood in the doorway, leaning on his cane. "She saved us all," he said. "No," Valencia replied. "She reminded us who we are." Dustwell didn't ask questions anymore. Not about Wren, not about Valencia, not about the strangers or the name. Spoken into cracked earth. But they watched. Not with suspicion. With something like reverence. The pastor returned a week later. He rebuilt the chapel himself. One plank at a time. He didn't mention the fire, or the bell, or the doll nailed to his door. But when Wren walked by, he took off his hat and bowed. She just waved. Grace didn't leave. Her maps grew longer, her notes deeper. She said the world was shifting again. But this time, Dustwell wouldn't be on the sidelines. It would be a light. A line. A name whispered in places where light had died. Doyle left a letter nailed to the porch. 4 words again. "When she's ready. Call. No signature. No return address. Just trust." Valencia folded it, placed it in a tin with Wren's first drawing and a photograph of Mrs. Callahan smiling at the garden gate. Moved. Slow, steady, not forgotten. Levi built Wren a swing from the old chapel bell rope. Grace taught her how to read maps by candlelight. Valencia taught her how to shoot, not to kill. To protect. To hold steady. To understand the weight of choosing when not to pull the trigger. On her 7th birthday, Wren asked for only one thing: "Tell me who my father was." Valencia didn't lie, didn't dress it in hope or shame. She told her the truth, that he was cruel, that he tried to own what couldn't be owned, that she ran not because she was afraid of him, but because she wasn't going to be him. "And you?" Wren asked. "I'm still learning," Valencia said. That night, Wren sat with Levi on the porch. "Do you think monsters ever change?" she asked. Levi chewed on a blade of grass. "No," he said. "But people can forget they were one. That's worse." By the next spring, word had spread. Not stories. Warnings. Whispers about a girl who stopped a storm, about a mother who built a wall out of nothing but will, about a town where the wind didn't blow lies anymore. Travelers came, quiet, worn, carved. By lost. They stayed, helped mend fences, dug wells, planted seeds. Dustwell grew, and with it, a truth. What survives the fire becomes harder to burn. One traveler brought a book. Old, bound in leather. Inside were names. Symbols. Warnings. Grace read it for 3 days, didn't speak, then closed it and said, "Something's coming." Valencia didn't ask what. She just checked her boots, her bullets, and kissed her daughter's head. Wren stood at the ridge, older now, taller, voice deeper. She stared at the horizon. Clover beside her. They watched the sky, not for signs, for answers. That night, a rider approached, young, bleeding, afraid. He didn't knock. He whispered a name, and Wren opened the door. Valencia rose. Levi reached for his cane. Grace gathered her maps, and Dustwell lit its lanterns. Because the world hadn't ended. It had begun. The boy's name was Elian, couldn't have been older than 15. He came with cracked boots, a torn jacket, and blood caked down to his elbows. His horse had collapsed miles back. He'd run the rest. What breath he had left was spent on 2 words: "They're coming." He didn't say who. Didn't have to. Everyone in Dustwell knew there was only ever one. They Valencia pulled him inside. Sat him by the fire. Grace checked the wound on his side. Not fresh but angry. A jagged slice across the ribs, like he'd been caught running past teeth. They hunted me, he whispered. All night, didn't sleep. Didn't bleed till I stopped. Wren crouched beside him, silent. Aline looked at her like she was older than all of them. Like she already knew the story he was too broken to tell. They said your name, he said. Eyes locked on Wren. They said you opened something that should have stayed buried. Wren didn't blink. I closed it. But they saw it. Aline breathed, and now they want it open again. By morning, Dustwell was alert. No panic, just movement. Quiet coordination. Levi and Grace redrew boundary lines. Doyle returned before sundown. Said nothing. Brought salt, iron, and a stack of black candles. Something big is coming, he muttered. Bigger than ghosts, older than men. He laid the candles in a circle around the bunkhouse. Just in case, he said. Won't stop them, but might confuse their noses. That night, the stars didn't show. The wind came in from the east dry. Hot, whispering things that didn't rhyme. Wren climbed to the roof. Watched the horizon. She could feel them now. Not as shapes. Not as men. As hunger. Thirst. Like the land itself had been promised. Something and had come to collect. Eoin slept by the hearth. Restless, mumbling names, places. Dead towns, Grace said. The ones that vanish off maps. She pointed. Her notes. Every place he mentions, there used to be stories. Lights, bells, then nothing. They hollowed them, Levi said. Grace nodded. Cleaned the bones. Valencia closed the door tighter. They won't clean us. Wren stopped speaking for 2 days, not out of fear. She was listening to things no one else could hear, and when she finally opened her mouth, it wasn't to talk. It was to sing. A low, strange melody, older than the town. Older than the dirt. It made the dogs howl. Made the candles flicker, but it made Aline sleep. Without twitching. Valencia didn't ask what it meant. She only listened and memorized every note. 3 nights later, the sky cracked open. No thunder. Just a sound like tearing silk. And through it, shapes poured like ink on paper. Not men, not beasts. Just edges, sharp and slow. Valencia didn't wait. She rang the old bell. Dustwell lit up. Lanterns swung. Guns were drawn. Doyle smiled. Finally. They didn't attack. Not directly. They stood at the edge of town. Watching. Always watching. Every hour, a new one joined the line. By dawn, there were dozens. Grace said nothing. Just kept marking her maps. Aline wouldn't go near. The window. They're not here for me, he said. They're here for what I saw. And what was that? Levi asked. A door, Aline whispered. One that looked back. Wren walked the fence line every morning. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with Clover. She counted them. Spoke to them. Not in English. Not out loud. But they flinched. When she passed, some vanished. Others stayed but turned away. Valencia sharpened knives she didn't intend to use, cleaned guns she didn't plan. To fire. This was different. Not a battle. A bargain. One they didn't remember agreeing to. On the 5th day, a woman came. Alone. No cloak. No weapon. Just bare feet and black eyes. She stepped over the fence like it wasn't there, walked to the well, and whispered something into it. Then she turned, faced the house, and spoke. We want the child. Valencia stood. Doyle stepped beside her. Levi didn't move. Grace watched with pen in hand. The woman waited. I'm right here, Wren said. From behind them all, the girl stepped forward. Not trembling, not hiding. The woman bowed. Not with respect. With recognition. Do you know what you are? She asked. Wren nodded. Do you? The woman smiled. I was the first. Wren stepped closer. Then you remember what happened to the first. Silence. Thicker than smoke. The woman's smile faltered. I came for peace. You came for power, Ren said. But you brought memory instead. The woman hissed, then vanished. Like chalk and rain, the shapes followed. One by one. Dustwell stood still, then breathed. That night, Ren asked her mother, "How long will this last?" Valencia answered truthfully, "As long as people keep forgetting what's worth protecting." Ren looked out the window. "Then I won't forget." The next morning, Ren stood at the edge of the field, watching fog roll in like a slow breath from the earth itself. Not storm fog. Not smoke. Something older. Something that moved without wind. Valencia stepped beside her. "You feel it?" Ren nodded. "It's not over," she said. "No," Valencia agreed. "It's just quieter now." Grace read through the maps again. The coastlines weren't changing, but the spaces in between had. Distances stretched. Towns shifted. Roads doubled back on themselves. What once took a day's ride now took 3, if you arrived at all. "It's like the land's been rewritten," she said. "And not by a human hand." Doyle leaned over her shoulder. "So we're playing by new rules." "No," Grace muttered. "We're remembering old ones." That week, Dustwell saw new visitors. A woman with a mechanical eye and no voice. A boy who dreamt in languages he never learned. A man who only answered to music, who played a stringless lute like it told him where to go. They didn't ask for help. They offered it. And Dustwell made space. Ren watched each of them with the same careful curiosity she gave wild animals and unfamiliar dreams. She didn't speak much anymore, but when she did, people listened. Because she never wasted a word. On the 10th day, Clover barked for the first time in months. Short, sharp. She stood at the edge of the bunkhouse porch, tail rigid, eyes on the hills. Valencia came running. So did Doyle. A shadow moved along the ridge. Not fast, not hiding. Just pacing the town like it knew every corner of it. Then it stopped and waited. Ren stepped out on her own. The shadow raised its hand. She raised hers. The shape nodded once and disappeared. Elian, now well enough to walk, joined Levi at the chapel. Each morning, they hammered wood, reset beams, and planted vines along the rear wall. Levi handed him a nail. "You staying?" Elian shrugged. "Where else would I go?" Levi nodded. "Good answer." That night, Valencia lit a fire in the center of town. Not for warmth, for gathering. Stories were told. Laughter echoed. Even the birds didn't interrupt. Ren sat beside Grace, drawing symbols in the dirt. Grace watched, heart tight. "Do you know what those mean?" "No," Ren said. "But they know me." Later, Doyle sat alone at the well. Valencia joined him. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked. He chuckled. "Only in ways that end in fire." She sipped from her flask. "You could go anywhere." He shrugged. "Anywhere don't need me." Dustwell somehow still did. Ren's dreams grew longer, more vivid. She described cities built beneath oceans, towers made of teeth, suns that didn't rise, but stared. Sometimes she woke laughing, sometimes crying. Always silent. Valencia started keeping a journal of them. To explain. To remember, because memory was armor now. On the third moon, the sky bled blue, not red. Not fire, but something thick and strange that stained the clouds. The townspeople watched, calm. Prepared. Ren stood barefoot in the field. And whispered. One word. The clouds cleared. Grace started training the children, not to fight. To notice. To recognize the lies between the lines. She gave them compasses that spun, stones that hummed when held, tiny books filled with blank pages that only revealed stories when dipped in moonlight. The children didn't question it. They just learned. Ren taught them how to walk in silence. How to read wind. How to listen for weeping that didn't come from mouths. One afternoon, a letter arrived, sealed in wax. No sender. Inside, a single page. We remember the name. We are coming. Valencia read it once, then burned it. No reaction. No warning, but she packed a bag that night. And hid it under her bed. Ren noticed. Is it soon? Valencia nodded. Maybe. Will. I have to go? Only if the world forgets again. Ren tilted her head. Then we'll remind them. Clover passed away on the 7th spring. Peaceful. Under the tree Ren used to nap beneath. They buried her with 3 stones, a ribbon, and one of Ren's first drawings. No one spoke at the burial. Some silences matter more than words. That night, the wind changed. It spoke again, but not of hunger. Of warning. Grace woke with blood on her maps. Doyle stood at the edge of town, watching stars blink out. Levi found moss growing on his tools, letters forming from spores. Valencia held her daughter close. Ren didn't sleep, because this time, the dreams weren't hers alone. They belonged to everyone. Ren stood over the ridge, her fingers brushing the grass that hadn't grown there in years. Beneath her boots, the earth hummed a rhythm like a heartbeat buried too deep for most to hear. But she heard it, and so did the others. Below, Dustwell looked unchanged, but it wasn't. The land had shifted. The people had shifted. And something beneath them all was stirring awake again. That morning, Grace painted the town's borders in salt and ash, circles, triangles, lines that intersected at strange angles, familiar only to those who had seen. The way stars move when no one is watching. They're trying to open a different kind of door this time, she said. One that pretends it was always open. Levi laid down railroad nails at every corner. Doyle buried knives. No one asked what the symbols meant anymore. They just followed directions. Some truths were too big to explain. In the bunkhouse, Elian woke with blood on his palms. Not his own, not fresh. He wept without sound. Valencia sat beside him, lit a candle and handed him a mirror. You're not broken, she said. You're a lantern. He didn't understand, but he believed her. That night, a man arrived without a shadow. Tall, pale, dressed like he'd stepped out of a dream, halfway through forgetting it. He asked no questions. He only stared at Ren. Smiled. I knew your name before you had it, he said. Ren didn't smile back. You can give it back then. He laughed like glass, but when she blinked, he was gone. The frost he left behind stayed until morning. The children stopped playing. Outside, not out of fear, out of instinct. They started chalking doors with symbols of their own, on trees, on stones, on each other's arms, symbols they hadn't been taught, symbols Ren recognized from her dreams. They're remembering too. Grace said. Ren nodded. That's what keeps them from being forgotten. The earth cracked on the 14th night. Not deep, but loud. Like something had finally stopped pretending it was asleep. Valencia stood at the edge of the breach. Steam hissed upward, a smell like rust and roses. Not yet, she muttered. Doyle joined her. But close. Levi placed fresh water at each town corner. 4 bowls. One for each cardinal truth. They shimmered blue until the 3rd night, then turned black. He poured them into the earth anyway. Truth don't care how it looks, he said. Only that it's seen. On the 22nd day, a girl appeared. In the mirror, not Ren. Not a reflection. Just a face. Watching, she never blinked. Never spoke. Just waited. Ren didn't cover the mirror. She whispered to it. Stories, songs, memories that belonged to no one else. On the 3rd night, the girl mouthed a single word: remember. The lights in Dustwell never flickered, but shadows began moving the wrong way. Candles bent toward darkness. Trees grew without sound, and the wind smelled like places that didn't exist. Still, no one ran, not because they weren't afraid, because running never helped the ones who came before. Valencia taught Ren how to cut between words, not to lie. To bend truth in ways it couldn't be broken. You don't always need a sword, she said. Sometimes you just need the right sentence. Wren practiced in silence, then spoke one sentence at the well. The water froze solid. She never told anyone. What she said. The man with no shadow returned. He came to the chapel, touched the vines, and hissed, "This place shouldn't be green." Levi turned. That's the point. The man bared teeth, but never stepped inside. Some doors still worked. Elian wrote songs now, about fields that whisper. About stars that lie. About girls who could close doors with lullabies. Wren didn't correct him. Not all stories were meant to be facts. Some were just warnings. The fog returned, but this time, it curled around Dustwell without touching it, like it was waiting for permission. Grace watched it through a lens of polished bone. Whatever's coming, it's asking first. Valencia cleaned her rifle. Then we can say no. Wren walked past them both. Stood at the gate, looked into the fog. And whispered, "Not yet." The fog obeyed. That night in her dreams, Wren found a door. Wooden, heavy. Her name was carved in the frame, but not alone. Hundreds of names, some scratched out, some still burning. She pressed her hand against the wood. It pulsed. Then it opened, not inward, not outward, but sideways, like time tearing a seam, and through it, she saw herself. Older. Alone. Smiling. The older Wren reached out, touched her shoulder. And whispered, "You did it right." The following morning, Wren didn't speak, not out of silence, out of stillness, the kind that settles in a person when they've seen too much, too fast, and need the world to slow down to match their breath. She sat by the well, fingers trailing the rim, staring down into the darkness that no longer reflected. Grace joined her, but said nothing. Wren didn't look up. "He was in the door," she whispered. Grace frowned. "Who?" Wren paused. "Not a person, a feeling. Like a promise. Someone broke so long ago, it forgot how to be kept." That day, the sky turned silver. Birds flew in crook spirals, and every window in Dustwell developed a hairline crack at the same hour. Doyle counted minutes. Levi watched the clouds. Valencia wrote names. Not people. Places. Each one that had disappeared without fire, war, or plague. Just forgotten. Erased. She folded the paper and burned it in the center of town. Every name remembered is one less thing they can take. A boy named Silas found a book beneath the chapel. No cover. No spine. Just pages made of something not quite paper. When he opened it, the ink shimmered like oil. He showed it to Grace. She read one line before closing it, then buried it in salt. "Some books don't want to be read," she said. "They want to be obeyed." Silas nodded. He never touched it again, but sometimes he hummed the melody that lingered afterward, and it always rained when he did. The man with no shadow came a third time. He knocked on Valencia's door. She opened it slowly. Rifle in one hand. He bowed. "May I enter?" "No." He nodded, not insulted. "Then I'll ask instead." "Don't." But he did. He asked for Wren. Not her life, not her soul. Her voice. "The old songs are fading," he said. "She remembers them." "She does," Valencia said. "That's why you can't have her." This time, the man didn't vanish. He stepped backward into the fog, eyes never leaving hers. And when he faded, the frost cracked. Wren began drawing with both hands. Different things. One drew symbols she couldn't translate. The other drew people she hadn't met yet. Each face bore a scar. Each pair of eyes looked like hers. She showed them to Elian, he said. Nothing, but added lyrics to every drawing. Ballads waiting for their moments. Clover's grave sprouted a tree. Type no one recognized. Leaves like folded paper. Bark that hummed in the wind. The children began leaving gifts. Beneath it. Small things, ribbons, teeth, buttons. The tree changed slightly with each offering. Larger, deeper. Like it remembered. Like it listened. Valencia found a knife in her drawer that she didn't own. Carved bone handle. The blade glowed faintly blue under moonlight. Grace examined it. Not iron, not steel. Then what? Grace tilted it. Maybe it's a memory. A sharp one. Valencia kept it. Didn't use it. Just waited. Some weapons speak first. Others listen. On the new moon, every clock stopped. Exactly midnight dot and wouldn't restart until. Ren whispered the word. Again. It was morning by then. But somehow, it still felt like midnight. Levi built a bench on the North Hill, faced away from town. When asked why, he shrugged. Sometimes you gotta watch the dark to know the light's doing its job. Ren sat there every sunset. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with Elian. They never spoke there. That was the point. Dustwell changed slowly after that. People stopped asking if things were strange. They asked if they were true. And truth, it turned out, had its own strange ways. Water that ran uphill. In the morning, doors that opened into different rooms depending on your name. Voices in the wind that sang lullabies in reverse. No one was surprised. Surprise had become extinct. But not hope. Hope grew in strange soil. Like flowers blooming on the fonda chapel roof. Or laughter in dreams shared by people who never met. It sounded like Ren's humming. Or Grace's chalk. Or Levi's hammer. It looked like Doyle sleeping with both eyes closed. Or Valencia setting down her gun for a full day. It felt like stories that stayed in your bones, even after forgetting who told them. That night, Ren dreamed of nothing. No doors. No songs. No warnings. Just silence. Soft. And clean. And when she woke, she wept, because even silence, when true, has a sound worth remembering. In the days that followed, the wind brought whispers. Not voices. Not warnings, just the feeling of something remembered wrong. People paused mid-sentence, turned their heads like they'd heard their names from far away. Some swore they smelled their grandmother's bread baking. Others claimed they saw a childhood toy lying in the dust before it vanished. Ren called it the echoing. Valencia called it what comes after forgetting. Elian found a stone in his bedroll, smooth, black, perfectly round. When he held it, he saw a town with silver rooftops and no shadows. He gave it to Grace. She wrapped it in copper wire and buried it beneath the chapel floor. We're not meant to hold futures, she said. Only carry them long enough to pass on. A storm circled Dustwell for 3 days, but never touched down. Rain fell in reverse. Thunder came before lightning. Ren walked in it barefoot. Each drop that touched her skin sizzled. Something's pushing back, Doyle said. Something that doesn't like being seen. The tree above Clover's grave bore fruit. Small, blue, shaped like teardrops. Children picked them. Never ate them. They'd crush them into dust and scatter it across their windowsills. No monsters at night, one girl explained. And she was right. That week, not a single shadow moved wrong. Valencia dreamed of fire. Not destruction. Illumination. An entire mountain lit from inside. She woke with ash on her fingertips. Something's waking, she said. And it remembers who we are. The man with no shadow sent a gift. It arrived in a sealed wooden box. Inside, a mirror that reflected things. Behind you instead of in front. Ren placed it in the schoolhouse. Children wrote poems from what they saw. Not one was afraid. Some truths make better stories when they aren't facing you. Grace found a map, stitched into a coat lining. She hadn't worn the coat in years. The map showed rivers where there were none, and roads that looped through the same place twice before arriving somewhere new. She traced it with her finger, then hung the coat on the chapel wall. A guide for when the real roads forget their purpose. Elian sang at the well, not for anyone, just to see what came back. The water glowed faintly gold. Ren dipped her hand and felt her own heartbeat echo. Felt someone else's too. They didn't match, but they didn't fight. Dustwell's boundaries thickened. Not with fences. With memory. The town remembered who belonged and who didn't. Strangers arrived, only to stop at the edge, confused. Thought We were going somewhere else, they'd say. Valencia would nod. You are. And they'd leave, smiling, lighter. Some carried stories with them, some left pieces behind. On the 30th night, Wren gathered everyone at the well, even the ones who didn't like crowds, even the ones who'd stopped believing. She spoke 3 words. Do you remember? And each person answered, not a loud dot with a song, a gesture dot, a tear, a drawing. Silence, whatever they had left. The well lit up dot, the tree shivered, and a crack formed in the sky. Not a threat dot, an invitation dot. Wren looked up, and Ivy Quama whispered, not yet. But the sky didn't close dot, it waited dot for them, for something more. Grace wrote a letter with no recipient, folded it 12 times, burned it beneath the roots of the chapel. She didn't say what was in it. But afterward, the bell rang on its own, once soft like. Gratitude. Valencia sat at the table sharpening her knife of memory. Doyle cleaned the black candles. Levi carved words into the bench on the North Hill. Here, the dark learns our names. Wren drew a door. In chalk, on the side of the old mill. People passed it every day. Some knocked, some left gifts. No one opened it. One morning, it was gone. But everyone still walked around that spot, just in case. Some instincts are earned. Alian wrote a final song. He didn't sing it. Just handed it to Wren. She read it once, and cried, then smiled, because she knew what came next. Wren stood in the field again, the one where no grass had grown for years, now lush with something not quite green. It shimmered, not with dew, but with memory. Each blade hummed, vibrating at a frequency just low enough to not be heard, but high enough to feel. She stepped barefoot into it. No pain, no chill. Just the feeling of being known. The crack in the sky widened that week. Not with sound. With feeling. You didn't hear it open. You remembered it always being there. Birds flew through. It came out, changed. Feathers darkened. Songs reversed. Children stopped drawing the sun as yellow. Now it was blue. Or violet. Or shaped like something not round at all. No one corrected them. Some truths evolve. Levi's bench cracked in half. Not from weight. From words. The final carving he made, don't blink if it loves you, etched too deep. The wood split. He smiled at the wreckage. Yes, it hurt me. He didn't rebuild it. He planted salt around the pieces instead. A small boundary for things that needed permission. Doyle saw his brother, who died 5 years ago. He stood at the well, drinking. Not ghostly, not strange. Just there. You never left, Doyle said. His brother looked up, water dripping from his beard. Neither did you. When Doyle blinked, he was gone, but the ground stayed wet, and his flask tasted sweeter that night. Valencia stopped. Sleeping. Not from fear, from readiness. She sat in her chair by the fire, polishing the knife, sometimes speaking in languages no one had taught her. Wren listened from the doorway, didn't interrupt. The words weren't dangerous, just old, like lullabies meant to keep gods asleep. The schoolhouse mirror clouded over. Not with steam. With breath. Tiny words began appearing each morning. You are close. We are more. Hold the edge. No one knew who wrote them, but the children brought chalk and began replying. Questions. Drawings. Chokes. The mirror answered only with stillness. And once, with laughter. A path opened west of Dustwell. Hadn't been there before. No road. No markings. Just a feeling in the spine. The kind that says, you're not lost, just not remembered yet. Grace placed a stone at its entrance, painted with the word, not yet. She didn't block it, but she watched it. Alian's final song was sung by someone else. A woman who arrived with a pack of wolves. Not leash. Just following. She sang the song without hearing it first. Perfectly. Then she sat down and slept under the chapel's eaves. Wren covered her with a blanket made of maps. She whispered, welcome back. The woman didn't wake, but she smiled. Clover's tree dropped. A single seed. Round. Warm. Wren held it in her palm. It pulsed like a heartbeat. She didn't plant it. She placed it in the schoolhouse window. Let it see. Let it learn. Let it choose. Fog returned one last time, but it didn't stop. It passed through Dustwell, like smoke through a sieve, tasted like lavender and lightning when it left. No one spoke, not because they were afraid, because they were listening. To something bigger, to something waking. That night, the door in Wren's dream opened again. This time, it wasn't sideways. It was down. She stepped through. Fell for hours, or maybe seconds, landed on her feet, in a place made of stories. Every surface pulsed with sentences. Some she remembered, some she hadn't lived yet. In the center stood a table. On it, a letter, addressed to her. She opened it. Inside, just one sentence. Are the story that remembers itself. When she woke, her hands were covered in ink. Grace organized a gathering, not a meeting, not a warning. Weaving. Each person brought something that didn't belong to them. A memory, a name, sound. They placed them on the ground in a spiral. Wren stood at the center. And hummed. Softly. The spiral glowed. And vanished. Grace smiled. No more forgetting. That was the night Dustwell became more than a place. It became a memory. No one could erase, not a defense, a declaration. Here we are. Here we were. Here we remember. Always. The wind carried no sound. Not silence, something fuller, like breath held across centuries, finally being let go. Dustwell's air felt thicker, like pages turning somewhere just beyond the eye. Wren stood in the middle of the chapel, palms open. Ink still lined the creases of her skin. Elian stood beside her, tuning the silence like an instrument. Grace lit candles shaped like forgotten constellations. Valencia set her knife in the offering bowl. No one asked what was coming. They only asked how to welcome it. That morning, every reflection turned left. Not the people, just their reflections. In puddles, in glass, in spoons. They blinked slower. Smiled smaller. They whispered things the body hadn't said yet. Levi watched himself in the forge's window for a full hour. Then wrote a letter and folded it into a paper boat. It caught fire the moment it hit the river. He didn't flinch. The river reversed direction. Fish swam forward, but water moved back. Children laughed. Doyle didn't. I've seen this before, he muttered. When? Valencia asked. Before I was born. She believed him. No one asked twice anymore. A woman arrived wearing the night sky. Not metaphor. Her dress held stars that moved. A belt of orbiting moons. She spoke without moving her mouth. Your name is almost remembered, she said to Wren. Then she kissed Grace's forehead and left footprints that glowed for days. Ian taught the birds a new song. It sounded like rain learning how to fall. They sang it only at dawn. It made the mountains hum. The town square filled with dust. Not from wind. From memory. Wren watched as outlines formed benches long since rotted, faces long since passed. But here they were, all gathered in silhouette. People sat among them. No one spoke, but every heartbeat synced. And stayed that way until dusk. Valencia was visited by a younger version of herself. No words exchanged, just a knife passed from one to the other. When the girl vanished, Valencia looked older, but also lighter. You gave her something, Grace said. No. She gave it back. The chapel's bell tower cracked open one night. Inside was a nest, 3 eggs. One shaped like an eye, one shaped like a star, one beating like a heart. They didn't hatch, but every night they hummed louder. Some said the sound matched Wren's pulse. Others said it matched the door. Clover's seed sprouted on the windowsill. Not into a plant. Into a word, written in bark. Stay. Children took turns reading it aloud. Each time, the sound became a little more permanent. Like the word was anchoring itself into the world. The path west disappeared. In its place, a mirror. No reflection, Just a view of Dustwell as it would be if no one had ever remembered it. Empty, flat, silent. Wren touched the mirror. It wept. She whispered, "We remember." It stopped. That week, dreams became communal. Everyone shared the same one, a room of doors. Each one marked with something deeply personal, a scent, a note, a bruise. They walked together. No one opening anything. Just walking. Knowing. Existing beside their own. Unspoken stories. Grace wrote a song backwards. Elian played it forwards. It opened a crack in the chapel floor. Not deep. Just wide enough to see light shining from underneath. Valencia whispered, "There's another Dustwell down there." "Not another," Wren said. "The first." They built a ladder from old truths. A rung for each name remembered. A rung for each silence honored. Rung for each moment forgiven. It reached into nothing. And returned with a feather soaked in ink. They hung it in the schoolhouse. The children called it the quill. Whenever someone lied, it swayed. Whenever someone sang, it glowed. One child vanished. Her name, Mira. Not taken. Just stepped between. Left a drawing behind. A doorway. With everyone's names carved around it. Above it, a phrase, "When you're ready." 3 days later, she returned. Older by years. Smiling. Carrying a seed made of starlight. She gave it to Wren. "It's yours." Wren planted it in the field of almost grass, and something bloomed. Not a plant. A shape, not describable. Only felt, but it pulsed. Alive. And waiting. That night, the sky whispered. Not to the town. To Wren, a name. Her name, the full one, the true one. She said it aloud, and the door opened. Not inward, not sideways, but everywhere. And Dustwell stepped through. They didn't walk through a doorway. They became the doorway. Each step Wren took, the land beneath her changed, grasses stitching themselves into symbols, air thickening with language older than wind. Behind her, Dustwell shimmered, no longer held in place by time, but by memory. And the people remembered. They remembered everything. Not as pain. As pattern. A map written in the spine. The new Dustwell wasn't a place. It was a rhythm. Elian called it a chord made flesh. Grace said it was a library where every book breathes. Valencia sharpened a blade that didn't cut, only revealed. They lived in a town that spoke back. When someone whispered love, the wind carried it to every window. When someone wept, the rain waited until they were done. Even the shadows learned kindness. Levi forged a gate that led nowhere, but anyone who passed through it came out lighter. Children called it the shedding arch. Wren watched people walk through it again and again, each time dropping something invisible but real. She only went through once. Afterward, her voice changed, deeper, clearer, like it had stopped apologizing. Birds nested in people's dreams. Literally. They laid eggs wrapped in lullabies. Each morning, the dreamers woke with new ideas stitched into their hands. Poems. Blueprints. Spells. Doyle framed his in wood. Grace sang hers to the fields. One child baked hers into bread, and no one was sad for a week. The schoolhouse became a lighthouse. Not with beams of light. With memories. It pulsed each dusk, reminding people of what mattered. Handheld, a story told twice. A moment forgiven. Strangers came just to sit near its warmth. They left changed, even if they didn't know why. Clover's tree grew upside down now. Roots in the air, leaves beneath the soil, but it thrived. Bore fruit shaped like promises, sweet and strange. They tasted different for everyone. Valencia said hers tasted like a mother's last hug. Wren said hers tasted like the moment she first learned silence could be sacred. At the heart of the new Dustwell, a circle appeared. No one built it. It just was. Stone carved with fingerprints, names that changed depending on who read them. When someone stepped inside, their dreams became public, projected into the sky at night. No one judged. They only watched. And remembered. Grace taught the birds to write. Not letters. Stories. They scratched tailies into the dirt, about girls, who planted thunder, about wells that sang, about towns that turned memory into magic, no one corrected them. Some stories deserve to change shape. One morning, Wren walked to the edge of Dustwell. There was no fog, now only light, and she heard it, her name, the long one, the true one, spoken by everything, the stones, the sky, the roots, and she answered, not in words but in being. She became what she had always been meant to be, not a girl, not a savior, a story that carried others across. Bridge written in breath, a doorway that remembered, and in her wake, Dustwell sang, it sang for those who stayed, for those who left, for those not yet born, it sang because the remembering was done, and the becoming had begun. Elian's last song was sung by the ground itself, no notes, just vibration, just truth. He stood with his hands open, tears streaming, smiling like someone who had finally heard his own name, said the right way, Valencia, placed her knife in the roots of the tree, not to bury it, to offer it. The bark closed around it slowly, and in its place, a flower grew, a bloom made of steel and starlight. She picked it, tucked it behind her ear, never needed a weapon. Again, Grace disappeared, not vanished, expanded. She was in the chalk, in the river, in the sound the schoolhouse made at dusk. You didn't look for her, you listened. You remembered, you whispered thanks. Children began building boats from silence, set them afloat in puddles, watched them vanish with smiles. They didn't want destinations, just offerings. And so Dustwell became not a town, but a story passed hand to hand, not with pride, with reverence, because stories like these don't end. They ripple, and each ripple carries a name, and each name becomes a seed, and each seed finds soil in the soul of someone brave enough to listen. That was Dustwell, not a place, not a time, a remembering, and it remembered you. The echo of Dustwell lingered, not as sound, as presence, a warmth beneath the skin, a vibration in the ribs, like a song you didn't know you remembered until you hummed it without thinking. Wren stood where the doorway had been, though now the edges were gone. There was no boundary anymore, just a sense of crossing into something deeper, softer, more certain. Behind her, the town pulsed gently. Ahead of her, possibility opened its arms. Children played games without names, not new, not old, inherited from dreams and dust. One game involved finding things no one had lost, a button, a wish, a song waiting to be sung. Each item carried a weight that wasn't burdened. It was anchor. Elian watched them, humming to himself, stitching their movements into lullabies. He no longer played for sleep, now he played for memory. The sky developed cracks of light, not stars, not holes, truths pressing in from elsewhere. Some shimmered blue, some whispered, some blinked like eyes considering whether to speak. Valencia cleaned the chapel windows until they reflected not people, but versions. Each pane held a choice you hadn't made but might. Single quotes ved. Each shimmer a maybe. She didn't flinch. She honored them, everyone. Levi built wind chimes that only rang when someone told the truth. Soon, the wind was constant. Truths poured from mouths like laughter. I still miss him. I'm afraid of sleeping without dreams. I think I'm more than I've been told. The chimes sang their yes. No one hit after that. Grace's name was now a verb. To grace, something meant to witness it with both hands open. To say, yes, I see you, without demanding more. The children used it in their stories, and the thunder graced the hills. The quiet graced her mouth. We graced each other into becoming. The tree where clover once grew now bore lanterns, glass blown from forgotten tears. Light fed by silence. Each lantern burned a different color. One flickered like first love. Another glowed like forgiveness. A third pulsed in sync with the moon. At night, they lit the entire field with memories that never asked to be understood, only held. A boy painted the air. He used no brush, just fingers. dipped in the pauses between thunder. Where he moved, shapes remained, not drawings. Feelings. People passed through them like curtains and came out remembering who they'd almost been. They thanked him without knowing why. Wren began writing again. Not in journals. Not in books. She wrote with her feet. Each path she walked spelled something. To the birds. To the sky. To whatever waited. Watching, listening. She didn't ask what it meant. Meaning came after movement. One morning, Valencia woke to find a necklace around her throat, not placed there by hand. By story. It held a stone that shimmered like all the battles she never had to fight. She wore it like a scar that smiled. Doyle taught the river to carry messages, not paper. Emotion. He whispered sorrow into it. 3 towns downstream. A man woke with peace in his chest and tears in his eyes. He didn't know why. He just said, "Thank you." The moon asked questions, through tides, through silence, through the stillness just before rain. Wren answered with a dance. Not elegant. Honest. When she stopped, the clouds parted for a week. A thank you shaped like light. Dust wells stopped growing, not because it reached a limit, because it became whole. Everything it needed now grew inside the people. New maps folded in their hearts, new songs hummed in their marrow. New doors opened behind their eyes, and Wren, she became a story told by trees. Rhythm carried in wind. She no longer needed to lead, because everyone had learned how to walk forward with their own names on their tongues, the long names, the true ones. And in that chorus, Dustwell didn't disappear. It scattered like pollen. And took root in every place brave enough to remember. Somewhere past the memory of Dustwell, something opened. It wasn't a door. It wasn't a place. It was a question, asked not in words but in quiet. And Dustwell answered. Not with thunder, with light, but with people who remembered how to listen. Leon no longer carried an instrument. He carried presence. Every step he took became a note. Every pause a measure. The ground hummed beneath him, composing songs out of footsteps and breath. Where he walked, strangers exhaled like they'd been holding something for too long. The sky learned to write. Not with clouds. With shadow. Dusk. Phrases stretched across the horizon in a language no one knew, but everyone understood. You're not lost, only turned. Forgiveness is not silence, it's the sound after. Begin again. Children read them aloud, like bedtime stories, and slept deeper. Grace became a river. Not literally, but in how she moved. She flowed through cities, through fields, through grief, and left something behind each time. Not advice. Stillness. She was. The pause between storms, the breath taken just before saying, "I'm sorry." The echo of a kindness never spoken aloud but always felt. Valencia was seen in 2 places at once, and neither was surprised. In one town, she helped deliver a child born with silver eyes. In another, she stood at the edge of a cliff, teaching an old woman how to fall without fear. When asked how she did it, she only said, "Sometimes memory is faster than the body." Levi forged stars. Tiny ones, from metal and memory. He handed them to travelers, told them, "This one glows when you're close to truth." People returned months later, changed. Not with stories. With silence full of answers. Wren walked through the world not as someone searching, but as someone anchoring. She no longer questioned the path. She was the path. Places bloomed behind her. Not with flowers. With choice. Towns that hadn't existed found themselves on maps. Hearts once closed began to hum. The mirrors in the old train. Stations no longer showed reflections. They showed invitations. To forgive. To pause. To remember. Wren stepped into one mirror and emerged in a chapel that hadn't stood for 100 years. She sat on the only pew left intact, and the dust moved around her like breath. She whispered, "I know." And the chapel exhaled. Somewhere, a girl named Mira planted another seed. This one grew a door. People came from miles to knock. Some waited, some turned away, some opened it. None came out the same. A lion hummed to the sea. It stilled. Fishermen wept. Not from fear. From knowing they'd never seen it listen before. In a city lit only by grief. Someone found a lantern from Dustwell. It didn't burn. It pulsed. A heartbeat held in glass. They placed it at the center of the square. People gathered and remembered how to be human again. Dustwell didn't vanish. It became contagious. Not like sickness. Like music. Each person who carried a piece of it gave that piece away. Not lessened. Multiplied. Whole towns relearned how to speak softly. Whole cities remembered what it meant to sit still. Whole families built altars from memory. Not stone. And Wren. She stood under a sky stitched with names. Each one glowed. Not because it was known, because it had been spoken aloud with love. She traced them with her finger. Not to memorize. To think. Somewhere, a boy wrote a letter to a mother he never met. Folded it into a bird, let it fly. He didn't expect an answer, but when he slept, he dreamed of arms. And woke without the ache he'd carried for years. The wind changed. Languages began speaking in memory. Not words. Moments. You didn't hear it. You remembered it. And across the world, people began to say it. Softly. Always softly. Dustwell. Not as a place. As a promise. As a hush between heartbeats. As a story that chose to live in whoever was quiet enough to hold it. And those who held it? They glowed. Not bright. But true. And true was enough.